welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am Dan Schmidt. This is the Deer Talk Now podcast. We've really enjoyed having you join us for these new podcasts. I've been having fun because I get to talk about things pretty much unfiltered, and it allows me to maybe shed some light on things that you might have been wondering and probably thoughts that you also have. Chances are, if you're watching this, you are a hunter, but you might not be a hunter. And I hope today that some non-hunters are listening to this. You might be listening to this in the vehicle, driving somewhere. You might be with a hunter. And I want to change your thoughts and your actions on this particular subject that I'm pretty passionate about. I call this one the trophy hunting myth. And it has infiltrated North American hunting in general, especially whitetail hunting over the past 30 or 40 years, but also hunting, big game hunting mainly in other places of the world. But what I want you to think about when I say the word trophy hunting, what does that trigger for you? In most cases, it's a negative connotation. And it kind of goes like this. So bear with me for a second. You're at a cocktail party, you're at a bar, you're at a softball game, you're at your kid's soccer game, and you might be a hunter, and you're talking to somebody, a buddy or whoever, about hunting. And, you know, I went hunting, shot a big buck, missed a big buck, whatever it happens to be. And then there's somebody sitting next to you, and they're a non-hunter. And the conversation usually goes like this. Well, you know, I approve of hunting, you know, except for those guys and gals, I guess, who just go out there to shoot an animal and, you know, put its head on their wall or, you know, put its antlers on their wall. That's how it kind of goes, right? When we talk about trophy hunting. And if you extrapolate that over to people who are big game hunters, especially that go to Africa and some places like that, oh my gosh, those trophy hunters, they're only over here to, you know, to satisfy their bloodthirst and their ego and to kill something so they have a trophy that they can put in their house. Now, to a non-hunter or an anti-hunter, that comes across as very negative, and obviously it gives hunting a bad name. But the way that I'm going to couch this, I don't even need to say couch this, is to explain this. It doesn't work that way. Me personally, I'm a hunter. I've been my whole life. I've traveled for the past 3 decades to 24 states, 3 provinces. I've met literally thousands of other hunters along the way. I have never met one person, honest to God, that only goes out there to shoot an animal to put its head on their wall. I don't. It doesn't exist. That is a negative. It is a false narrative that does not exist. And I think if you're a hunter, I'm not trying to preach to the choir here. I'm trying to re-inform you that whenever you come across that term, you need to stop somebody in their tracks, not confrontationally, politely and respectfully saying, explain that to me. Actually, explain to me what you view as trophy hunting. And if you get that response, you can give them the same response that I gave you. Do you know anybody? Do you know anybody personally that does that is only a quote-unquote trophy hunter? Because there's several prongs to this discussion that are necessary to not only comprehend, but to be able to portray to the non-hunting public. Whether you want to accept that responsibility or not, you don't have to be on the front lines. You do not have to be Ted Nugent and be on stage because, let's face it, he does the work for us. From a public relations standpoint, he does the work for us. But from an individual member of the hunting community, whether, like I said, you want to accept that responsibility or not, you should accept it at the very least minimum to educate your family, your friends, and your acquaintances as to what hunting means to you and what you view as trophy hunting, because I think we're all going to agree that it doesn't involve that. Now, there's a second prong, a category that I'm going to get to here, which clouds those lines and makes otherwise educated people highly uneducated in this subject. I see extraordinary people with doctorates, people who have very successful careers in business or Hollywood or anywhere else who simply don't understand, who don't understand how the natural world works that way. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But let's talk about first the trophy hunting myth here. Number one, what clouds it? What clouds it is they see taxidermy. They see pictures on social media, maybe some unscrupulous behavior on social media, which we should talk about. But if you go to the whole trophy hunting mentality, yes, we have trophy hunting books. We have record books. Is there ego in hunting? Yes, there's ego in everything. Is there ego in getting your name in a book because you killed a deer that was XYZ inches of antler? Yes. Yes, there's ego in that. Does that dilutes the subject a little bit. But if you look back at the history of those things, the history of record keeping was to honor the animals. That actually goes back to Teddy Roosevelt, who was a big proponent and founder of the Boone and Crockett Club. People think of the Boone and Crockett Club as, well, that's just a bunch of old white guys who, love to put their ego up there and say they killed X amount of animals with X amount of inches. That's not what that was about. The Boone and Crockett Club was a conservation organization that was started to help preserve and conserve wildlife habitat and wildlife in America. And as a result of that, how they showed it to the public then was, look at these magnificent animals that we are producing here in America because of conservation. Because we are preserving these lands and we are putting bag limits on species, we're producing these giant, beautiful stags. That's where that came from. So yes, there's some ego in there. There's another part of the trophy hunting myth that is deeply rooted in popular culture. And when I say this, do not dismiss it and do not immediately think you know what I'm talking about. Because I didn't even know what I was talking about until recently. It is the Bambi Syndrome. Now, when we think of that, we think of the Disney movie. We think of, most hunters are going to think of that as immediately as that was anti-hunting propaganda, which it was from Disney's aspect, which it basically spiraled out of control into something even more monstrous than originally presented by Disney. However, now one thing I want you to do, if you have not read it, there was an article in Deer and Deer Hunting. We have it on our website. It's free, deeranddeerhunting.com, written by a good friend of mine, one of the best outdoor journalists I know, Steve Sorensen. We titled it just appeared here 2 issues ago in the magazine. We have it on the website, deeranddeerhunting.com. Look it up. It's called The Buck Fawn That Bamboozled America, the story of the Bambi myth. But read that. I'm not going to give it away. You have to read it. Trust me. It's going to be the best read you had today or this weekend or whenever you read this article, because the whole story of Bambi started before the movie, started with a book, and the book was not about hunting. Not even close. It was foreshadowing of something else. It was brilliant. But it was not about anti-hunting. It was turned into anti-hunting by popular press. That is another thing that has helped cement that idea of this. Like I said, you talk about stereotypes. Hunters I know, educated hunters I know, are the most inclusive individuals I know in America. I've had the unique experience of rubbing elbows on both sides of all this culture. I have worked in New York City when we were corporate. I was 26th and Broadway. I had to work there. I had to work other places. I had to go to corporate retreats and things like that. I've dealt with people from all aspects, but I also have had my hands in the dirt. And I've also had my hands in a deer's chest cavity. And I've carved backstraps out of a deer and eaten that sacred venison. Does that make me some kind of barbarian? No, it doesn't. But that's that undertow, which I always talk about, of the other side, how they want to manipulate the narrative to make us look like cretins dragging our knuckles when that's not what it's about. But that trophy hunting term is a convenient one to throw out there. It is something that, it's a great talking point. And if you're not educated on the subject, yeah, you know what? You are right. Those guys are a bunch of losers. They're a bunch of just rednecks who want to go kill stuff and put stuff on their wall, mount a head and shove it in their living room. It's not what it's about. But first, let's talk. That's the second part of the conversation. The rest of this conversation is, like I said, name a hunter that doesn't utilize the deer. I utilize them all. I've hunted in 24 states, 3 provinces. I've shot hundreds of deer. I do not say that to brag. Just to give you an idea of how much venison I've put on the ground. Have I eaten every scrap or morsel? Of course not. Of course not. Do some people I know do that? Yes, they might shoot 1 or 2 deer a year for their family, and that's what they use. But there's, like I said, it's a melting pot. Every deer I've ever shot, every morsel of that deer was used by somebody. My friends, my family, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, my friends, people in camp I don't even know. And guess what? Venison donation programs across the country. And that's another thing that you have to tell people. Like I say, take it upon yourself, even if you're only educating your neighbor who's a non-hunter, because that's what's going to help us keep hunting in the forefront of the American outdoor lifestyle. Man!
All right, let's take a break and let's thank one of our sponsors. Today's episode of Deer Talk Now is brought to you by TrueFire and the Edge line of archery releases. Designed with a smaller than dime-sized head, the Edge utilizes a linear bearing that delivers an extremely smooth trigger feel. Pull the trigger back to open the jaws and let up on the trigger to close the jaws. This release also features a lockdown set screw for your length of adjustment. Once you have the correct length, just simply tighten the set screw and the length will be locked in place. 100% American made. If you've seen me on Deer and Deer Hunting TV, this is the release this is my go-to release. I love these releases. I've been shooting them for years. And what I really especially love about the Edge design is its buckle fold-back design. This allows me to put my release on before I leave the truck or right when I leave the truck and keep it on until I come back. Super nice, even for climbing tree stands, does not get in the way. For more information on the Edge release, visit Veridine.com.
According to Feeding America, 1 in 7 Americans struggle with hunger. Just today, this morning, when I was thinking about, okay, what am I going to do for this podcast? I had this idea. Here comes Scarlett Johansson on my TV. I'm watching NFL Network. I watch it every morning. Here's a Scarlett Johansson 30-second commercial about hunger in America and how 16 million children go hungry every day. Give them some venison. I'm not kidding. I'm not being facetious. And guess what? We do. Does she open up her wallet? And maybe she does. I'm sure she does. I'm sure a lot of Hollywood types do that. They open up their wallet. They give 10 grand to whatever, LA Soup Kitchen, whatever it happens to be. They might even go work there. I don't know. All I know is personally, I do it. I've donated deer every single year. And guess what? I'm not the only one. I'm going to give you do it. I know you do. A lot of you do. I'm going to give you some stats here. Another thing that's on our website that you can actually access pretty easily. Venison donation programs in the United States. Now, this is just since their inception. So I'm going to give you the top 7 states since their inception of their venison donation programs. Now, some of these started in the earliest, 1991, Pennsylvania and Michigan were the first 2 to start venison donation programs on a statewide level. And then we've had some others in the year 2000, 2001, 2002. Every state has one. But here we go. Wisconsin, number 1. 3.8 million pounds of venison donated by hunters to soup kitchens, to food banks, whatever. 3.8 million pounds of food. Protein. Best protein you can have. Texas, 2.5 million pounds. Pennsylvania, 2 million pounds. Oklahoma, 1.9 million pounds. Michigan, 931,000 pounds. Indiana, 572,000 pounds. South Carolina, right at 500,000 pounds of venison. That's what we're doing. And how you ask me, does that relate to trophy hunting? It has everything to relate to trophy hunting because, as you know, 99.999% of the people who are killing a deer are either using it themselves or they're giving it to somebody else. And there's nothing wrong with that. The deer, Ted Nugent told us this, the deer have to die. We have to manage them. If we don't manage them, we are not doing a service to the wild environment, not just the deer, not just the wildlife. Our forest ecosystems, everything, it all plays together. The deer have to die. Well, who needs? That's the other one. Well, Dan, that's my condescending counterpart sitting over here, the imaginary person. Well, Dan, who needs to kill 6 deer a year? Who needs to fill all these doe tags? Who needs to kill more than 1 buck a year? I do. You know why? Because number one, it's something I like to do. It's an activity I love to do. It's a lifestyle that I embrace, that I enjoy. I eat venison 5-6 times a week. If you don't trust me, come on over. I'll make some for you. Number two, the deer have to die. And hunters, whether you like it or not, that's your responsibility. Certainly don't want the government doing it for me. I'm certainly not paying them to do it when I can do it myself for free with a Matthews bow and Easton arrow. No, you have to do it. The deer have to die. So, but you don't be in their face about it. If it's a non-hunter, educate them. Okay, now you're gonna bring out examples, I'm sure, that you're gonna say, well, here's a case of a guy in Oklahoma who killed 27 bucks, poached them, and just cut their heads off and left the bodies to rot. Yes, that happens. Guess what? There are bad people in this world. There are bad people in this world. I don't know anybody who's done that, just like I don't know anybody who's murdered somebody. I'm not being trite or flip, but there are bad people in the world. Some people get consumed with desires of their own. But from a hunting community, no, that's not a hunter. A hunter's not doing that. A hunter's shooting that deer, taking whatever meat he can use for him and his family, and if he can't use it all, he gives it to somebody else. Nothing wrong with that at all. Those are the things. It is a myth that people actually kill animals just to put their head on the wall. So let's go to that. Why would people think that? Again, uneducated. If you haven't taken history class, I suggest taking one, or if you've already taken one and you forgot this, please maybe re-enroll, or guess what? Open up Google and start relearning your history on taxidermy, because that's where it comes from. People talk about, well, they just want to put this head on their wall because they see taxidermy, they see skulls, they see shoulder mounts, they see all this stuff, and they think, oh my God, that's sick. Why would you want to put something so... Well, you know what? Whether you like it or not, this goes back 2,200 years before Christ. Yes, it does. 2,200 BC. Guess what? Ancient pharaohs were taking dogs and cats and stuffing them and putting them in their tombs with them. I think King Tut did he? Didn't he? Golden cased cat next to him. Well, he didn't kill it. Well, no, they honored the animal, because you know why? Because we think we're so high and mighty. We think we've got so much more insight on the human development than ancient pharaohs. No, they did too. They were more grounded than we did. They knew that their existence on this earth, they were a tiny little chain. Charlie Alzheimer taught me this. When you realize that you are a vapor, that was his best one. Or when you realize you are one tiny little link in a chain that goes forever. And that's what they realized. So that's ancient times, okay? Ancient pharaohs. Well, what about hunting? Europe, 16th and 17th century. That's where modern taxidermy had a revival. 16th century. Why was that? because they were starting to travel the world and come across these magnificent animals that God put on this earth. And they were like, oh my gosh, this thing's gorgeous. I got to show my friends this. So they learned the art of taxidermy. So the counterpoint there, excuse me, the counterpoint there is, well, take a picture, it lasts longer. It goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than just, we want to marvel at this and look at it. If you look at how Europe evolved, there was, I've talked about this in videos on our TV show and online about respecting the kill. It was more than just this set of antlers. It was that experience. Now, in Europe, in the 16th and 17th century, they were starting to grapple with that themselves, and it wasn't about the accomplishment so much. It was about that day in the field. But let's bring it over to this side of the ocean. Where did it originate in North America? The best that I can find was the Cree tribe in Manitoba, Canada. These indigenous people, like I said, they originated up in Manitoba, later came across to Minnesota, North Dakota, and Montana. Tremendous hunters. Probably the best hunting community that North America has ever seen was the Cree. And the Cree, they were prolific caribou hunters, moose hunters, deer hunters, and elk hunters. And you know what they did? I'll tell you what they did because I wrote about it in my book. I wrote it about in my book over 20 years ago. What the Cree did, I'm just going to read you a paragraph here because this goes to the whole trophy hunting mentality. And you can kind of see where it evolved from there. The Cree were especially reverent to slain animals. So if they killed a deer, an elk, a moose, they were especially reverent. And in fact, their entire hunting tradition was built on elaborate rules that honored the animals that they took. And this is something I think everybody should pay attention to. If you have a Facebook account, an Instagram page, a Twitter account, or a YouTube channel, this is from right from the Cree. A Cree hunter's post-hunt behavior was at the top of the list. Hunters were forbidden from over-celebrating their kills, and in fact, unintentional boasts of a hunter's prowess were thought to be an insult to that animal's spirits and bring bad luck. That hits home for me, because I know I get awfully excited. I get awfully excited when I take an animal. It's not because I conquer that animal, it's because that adrenaline rush. That tooth, fang, and claw adrenaline rush gets the best of me. But I do ground myself into it, and that's why I do say prayers after I kill an animal. If you haven't seen it, we've got videos to prove it. I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm not saying that anything. I'm just saying that as a hunter, once you accept that responsibility, it makes everything come that much more into focus. So the Cree, their religion and beliefs was based on animism that encompassed spiritual or religious beliefs that the universe and all natural objects, plants, trees, rivers, mountains, rocks, etc., they thought they had souls or spirits. They also believed in the Great Spirit. They believed in God. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. But I also believe, I don't think this has to go down into a dissection, whether I believe a deer has a spirit or a soul. I believe that they deserve the respect that I'm taking that from this earth, I'm giving thanks for it, and I'm utilizing it. Am I putting those, look, I got antlers right here. This is a shed antler. This is not mine, this is Brad's, but I'm going to look at that and I'm going to marvel at it. I'm going to marvel at it because that is a natural creation that just floors me. We're not going to get into religion, but I don't think a Big Bang did this. But I'm going to tell you that for me, to put that skull on my wall or to put that shoulder mount on my wall, it's not like I'm taking my Little League trophy and putting it up there. Am I proud of it? I'm proud of the accomplishment, I guess. Does that make me a bad person? I hope not. What makes it better for me is I know when that buck stepped out. That buck right there I'm looking at, I don't know if you can see it. It's a 9-pointer I shot in 2007. I remember it. I remember when that deer stepped out from the pines and he stood there broadside. And I was losing my stuff. My snot, as Steve Bartello would say. I lost my snot when that buck stepped out. And my heart was just pounding. That's why I have those antlers there. They're certainly pretty to look at. But I can tell you the story. I've got 40 racks in this office. I can tell you the story about every one. Again, that doesn't make me better than anybody. Those are memories on the wall. And I've written about that and I've talked about it. And that's what it's about. And I would say any hunter can probably agree with me. Those are memories on the wall. How many hunters do you know, again, that have antlers on their wall that they don't know the story? You might have some. They might be like your grandfather's, or you might found one that was really cool from a garage sale or whatever. I know some people that do that. They're cool to look at. But the preponderance of the people who are doing this, it's not about that. It's not about that quote-unquote trophy. It's about the memory. Because when you're gone, those memories are gone, and your kids aren't going to want those antlers, and that, I think, proves my point. I don't know how many people I know like that. Dad dies, and there goes a whole pile of antlers either to the rummage sale or the flea market or whatever. Wasn't a trophy. If it was a trophy, somebody'd want it. And some people do take it, but it's not a commodity like that. So, my final analysis, my take on things. Again, I could go down some sidebars here that I think would probably go on for hours. One of the sidebars for me personally would be things I don't agree with. I don't agree with antler restrictions. I don't agree with what I should say government mandated antler restrictions. Don't agree with it. It's not rooted in biology or science. I'll go toe-to-toe with anybody who wants to talk about that. It's not. I don't agree with antler point restrictions because I think it does take this whole discussion to that level. It takes it to the level where people are thinking, well, that's the only reason why you want to do this is to grow big antlers. If you want to grow big antlers, you can do that. If you have your own property, you can do that. If you lease, manage, whatever, you can. Thank you, David. I'm going to take a break here because I need a sip of water. You can do that on your own, and there's nothing wrong with it. If you want to manage those deer because you're managing the populations, because you're being a responsible land steward. You're taking off the prescribed number of does off the property that you have to. You're keeping that herd in check so it doesn't overpopulate the landscape. And you want to let that buck grow to 3 or 4 or 5 years old. That's your prerogative. That is nothing wrong with that. And then when you shoot that deer, you have the memory of all the work you did, those trees you planted, those food plots you planted, you know, the various things, the invasives that you got out of your swamp, which I need to do this weekend. You did all that. That's one thing I don't agree with. The other thing, big thing that I do not agree with is the way that a lot of people portray themselves on social media. And that's going to go mostly to the younger crowd, and I'm going to tell you to all stand up, man up, woman up, and stop messing around. Stop disrespecting the animals. I'm not saying to put the animals on some kind of pedestal and that you have to be, walking on eggshells. But the stuff you post, the videos you post, the disrespectful things that you do on social media, people are paying attention. Who cares, you say? I don't care. That's youthful arrogance. Look that up. I've been there. I know it. I know a lot of examples I can provide over the past 30 years of youthful arrogance. It's not cool. Don't do it. Just look at yourself and don't do it. I'm not trying to sit here and browbeat you. I'm just trying to put yourself in the position, like I said, you do not have to be on the front lines on this. But what you should be doing is you should be paying attention to what other people say, especially non-hunters. Because in the end, it's not the anti-hunters who are going to take you down. It's the non-hunters who are going to take you down. And there's strength in numbers. And that's why I also say we need as many hunters as we can find. Recruit? Sure, recruit until you're blue in the face. Retain, I say, is more important. Retain those people who are getting older, excuse my French, who say, you know what, screw it. I am sick of this. I'm sick of fighting other people on public land. I am sick and tired of my neighbors browbeating me for shooting a, quote, 2-year-old. Shame on you. That's one thing that this whole APR thing, QDM thing, ruined in American deer hunting. You say it like it's some kind of insult. Oh, nice 2-year-old you shot, Schmidt. I just got that the other day. You know what? I laugh. Because that doesn't bother me anymore. What bothers me is the ignorance of that person. Because they grew up listening to all the garbage that was fed to them on social media, on television, by guys who are pounding their chest, thinking they somehow are some kind of man because they have to be that way. Small percentage. But the squeaky wheel gets the attention, right? So that's my soapbox there. You hunt for you. If it makes you happy, be happy and own that happiness. And don't let somebody sit there and try to make you feel lesser for a deer that you shot because it didn't measure up. This is like we're in grade school and it's name calling. That's something that bothers me, okay? But whether you are religious or not, sorry, I need another sip of water here. My final thought here. Whether you are, this does not have to do with religion. I am not advocating pantheism. I am not advocating of somehow, the Cree, let me go back to the Cree for a second. What did they do? They didn't mount deer. They took a buck's head and antlers and they propped it into the crotch of a tree or a rock outcropping or somewhere up high so that, that buck could see the sunrises and sunsets, and they thought that brought him good luck. I'm not saying to do that. I'm not saying you have to be religious about it or think that there's some great spirit involved with it. Just understand that you as a hunter, you are grounded, unlike anybody walking in North America. If you are a hunter and you're going out there and doing all these things, you are staying connected to the earth. It's no different. Okay, what is the best tomato you've ever eaten? Was it at Subway on your sandwich? I hope not, because they're normally green there, but was it one you got at the grocery store? No, it was one that you put your hands in the soil and grew for yourself. That's the best tomato that I've ever eaten. It's the best anything I've ever eaten. There's something the best apple I ever ate, State Fair strain of apple. I planted that tree. I watered that tree. I weeded that tree. I put mouse guards and deer guards and fences around it for 4, 5, 6 years until I got that nice little bright apple. And I ate that apple, and it's the best damn apple I've ever had. And I'm going to plant 12 of them this spring again. But was it because that apple, that State Fair, is because is it that strain of apple? It could be a Cortland. It could be Red Delight. It could be whatever. No. Is because I had my hands in the soil and I labored over it. And it's the same thing with deer hunting. It's the same thing with fishing. It's the same thing with pheasant hunting. It doesn't matter. Stay grounded. Keep your cool. And when, at the end of the day, if you encounter a non-hunter or even an anti-hunter and they want to tell you or they want to spin that, don't stand there quietly. Don't stand in the corner. Don't confront them. Don't get hostile on them. Pick and choose your spots for that. But just say, no, that's not what hunting is not about trophies. Explain what makes it unique for you. You heard what makes it unique for me. Maybe you've got a twist on it. And that's great. But explain that and own it. And I think at the end of the day, and the thing about it is, just because you do that tomorrow or this weekend doesn't mean we can go like this and clap our hands and we're all done. No. This is something that is going to be that we need to do as a community day in and day out. Teach it to our kids, teach it to our grandkids. That's how we have to go forward. It's not a job that is now done. It's something that we hold on to strongly for the rest of our lives. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you joining us today. If you want to watch all these podcasts, we have them everywhere. We have them on Apple. We have them on Podbeam. Just about any podcast platform that you can find. Deer Talk Now by Deer and Deer Hunting. You're going to find it there. And you're going to find the video versions of this on our website, deeranddeerhunting.com. You're going to find them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also our YouTube page. It's very simple, YouTube.com/DDH Online. For everybody here at Deer and Deer Hunting, thank you again for joining us. I am Dan Schmidt, and we will see you next time.